The massive alien ships appeared out of nowhere above Earth, their black metal hulls so large they blocked out entire sections of the starry sky. It was like watching a solar eclipse, except instead of the moon. Hundreds of warships had suddenly materialized in orbit around humanity's home planet. The ships were enormous, each one the size of a small city, with strange angular designs that hurt to look at for too long. Deep inside one of these vessels, Fleet Commander Nexus sat on his command throne, his 6 eyes glowing with satisfaction. The Vorthok had finally decided that humanity had grown too bold, too independent. It was time to put these young upstarts in their place. With a simple gesture from his clawed hand,
activated
the communication array that would broadcast his message to every human device on the planet below. The transmission crackled to life across Earth. Television screens flickered. Radios went silent, and even smartphones buzzed with an incoming message. Then came the voice, cold, mechanical, speaking perfect English, with an accent that sounded like grinding metal. "Humans of Earth," Commander Nexus began, his words echoing in living rooms, offices, and military bunkers across the planet. "Your species has expanded beyond its designated boundaries. You have colonized worlds that belong to the Vorthok Empire. It ends now." In the emergency command center deep beneath Seoul, Defense Minister Kim Woo-jin felt his blood run cold as he listened to the alien ultimatum. The man had spent 30 years in the military, had seen wars and conflicts that would break lesser people, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. His weathered hands gripped the edge of the control console as the alien commander continued. "Speaking, you have 12 hours to surrender completely," Nexus declared. "Abandon all your colonies. Submit to Vorthok rule. Accept your place as servants of the Empire. Refuse, and we will reduce your pathetic planet to ash and dust." Captain Lee Soyoung, Kim Woo-jin's most trusted aide, immediately began typing commands into her computer terminal. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency as she sent encrypted messages to military bases, space stations, and defense networks around the globe. The young officer had graduated top of her class from the Space Defense Academy, and she knew that humanity's survival might depend on the next few hours. The Vorthok had been watching humanity for decades. They had studied every human war, every conflict, every battle throughout history. To them, humans appeared to be nothing more than violent primitives who couldn't even agree on simple things, like borders or trade agreements. How could such a divided species possibly stand against the might of the Vorthok Empire? What the aliens didn't understand was that humans had a special talent. When faced with extinction, they stopped fighting each other and started fighting together. Kim Woo-jin knew this, and as he watched the alien ships hovering menacingly above Earth, he allowed himself a small, grim smile. The Vorthok had just made the biggest mistake in their long history. They had threatened humanity's children, their future, their very existence. And now, they were about to learn why that was a very, very bad idea. Commander Nexus leaned back in his command chair, watching the primitive planet below with amusement. 12 hours? He had given these humans 12 whole hours to accept their fate. It was more mercy than the Vorthok Empire usually showed to conquered species. He almost felt sorry for them. Almost the alien commander pulled up holographic displays, showing his fleet's capabilities. Each Vorthok warship was protected by energy shields that could deflect even the most powerful weapons. Their plasma cannons could melt through solid steel in seconds. The smallest ship in his fleet was 3 times larger than anything humans had ever built. This wouldn't be a war, it would be an extermination. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "our intelligence scans confirm human technology remains primitive. They're still using chemical fuel rockets and throwing metal projectiles at each other. No energy weapons, no proper shields. Their largest warships are barely the size of our escape pods." Nexus nodded with satisfaction. The Vorthok intelligence network was the best in the galaxy. They had been monitoring human communications, studying their military tactics, and analyzing their technology for 50 years. Humans were violent, yes, but they were also hopelessly backwards. It would be like crushing insects under his boot. What Commander Nexus didn't know was that deep inside a hidden bunker in the mountains of South Korea, Colonel Park Jin-ho was about to prove him very, very wrong. Park Jin-ho had spent his entire career preparing for this exact moment. It's not specifically an alien invasion that would have been impossible to predict, but a war against an enemy with superior technology. The colonel understood something that the Vorthok intelligence reports had missed. When humans couldn't win with better weapons, they won by fighting smarter. His fingers moved across a secure keyboard, typing in authorization codes that he had memorized but hoped never to use. Protocol 7 activated, he announced to his staff. All stations, this is not a drill. We are implementing the David strategy. The David strategy was named after the ancient story of a shepherd boy who defeated a giant with nothing but a sling and a stone. The idea was simple. When facing a technologically superior enemy, don't try to match their technology. Instead, use their advantages against them. Across the globe, military bases received the encrypted signal. Space stations orbiting Earth suddenly came alive with activity. Lieutenant Commander Choi Mina watched her screens light up as every piece of human technology in orbit began following new orders. "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving confirmation from all orbital platforms. The civilian satellite network is responding to military override commands. Space stations are activating emergency protocols. Even the old mining platforms are coming online." The Vorthok had studied human military vessels, but they had ignored something crucial. Humans didn't just put weapons in space, they put everything in space. Whether satellites, communication arrays, scientific research stations, mining platforms, even tourist hotels, and every single one of those civilian installations had been designed with a secret secondary. Its purpose. The aliens were about to learn that when humans built something, they built it to fight. The 12 hours passed in complete silence. "Commander?" Nexus had expected frantic communications from Earth, desperate pleas for mercy. Perhaps attempts at negotiation, maybe even pathetic threats. Instead, there was nothing. The planet below seemed to have gone quiet, as if humanity had simply accepted its fate. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're receiving no response from the human governments. No surrender signals, no communications of any kind." Nexus felt a flicker of annoyance. Oh, these humans were even more primitive than he had thought. They couldn't even manage a proper surrender. "Very well," he declared, his voice echoing through the command bridge. "Begin the attack. Target their major cities first. Show them what happens when they ignore the Vorthok Empire." The massive alien warships began to move into attack formation, their weapons systems charging with deadly energy. Nexus watched the tactical displays with satisfaction. This would be over in minutes, but then something unexpected happened. His sensors officer suddenly straightened in his chair, his multiple eyes widening with confusion. "Commander, I'm detecting multiple launches from the planet's surface. Thousands of them." "Missiles?" Nexus asked, though he wasn't particularly concerned. Human missiles were primitive things that their shields could easily deflect. "Not sure, sir. They appear to be small rockets using chemical propulsion. Very basic technology. But there are so many of them." Nexus pulled up the sensor display and nearly laughed. The screen showed thousands of tiny dots rising from Earth's surface, like angry bees leaving a disturbed hive. They were small, slow, and obviously primitive, exactly what he expected from humans. "Ignore them," he ordered. "Those toys can't even scratch our shields. Continue the attack." High above Earth's surface, Major Han Subin watched the alien fleet from her command station on the moon. For the past 3 years, she'd been working on humanity's most secret project, turning every single piece of human technology in space into a weapon. Not just military satellites, but everything. Whether stations, communication arrays, scientific research platforms, even the orbital hotels where rich tourists went for vacation. "All stations report ready," her communications officer announced. "We have confirmed responses from 847 platforms. Every single civilian installation has been successfully converted." The major nodded grimly. The Vorthok had studied human warships, but they had completely ignored the thousands of harmless civilian objects floating in Earth's orbit. Whether satellites designed to monitor storms had been quietly fitted with kinetic projectiles. Communication. Arrays had been loaded with explosive charges. Even the tourist hotels had been converted into missile platforms. "Launch everything," Major Han ordered. "Let's show these aliens what happens when they threaten our home." What appeared to be primitive chemical rockets were actually something far more dangerous. Each rocket carried dozens of smaller warheads, and there were thousands of rockets. As they reached the peak of their trajectory, they began to split apart. Releasing their deadly cargo, Commander Nexus watched his sensors with growing alarm as the thousands of small objects suddenly became tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. The primitive rockets had been carrying multiple warheads each, and now his fleet was surrounded by a swarm of projectiles that outnumbered his ships by more than 100 to 1. "Sir," tactical officer reported, his voice shaking, "we're detecting massive kinetic bombardment incoming. They're not using advanced weapons, they're just throwing metal at us. But there are so many." For the first time since the invasion began, Commander Nexus felt a cold stab of fear. The first tungsten rod hit Commander Nexus's flagship like a hammer striking glass. The Vorthok energy shields, designed to deflect the most advanced plasma. Weapons in the galaxy simply couldn't handle the brutal simplicity of a metal rod moving at 20,000 miles per hour. The shield flickered once, then shattered completely. "Impossible," Nexus roared as his ship shuddered from the impact. "Our shields can stop anything." His tactical officer was frantically working at his console, his 6 arms moving in a blur. "Sir, the projectiles aren't energy-based. They're just metal. Solid metal moving at incredible speeds. Our shields weren't designed for this type of attack." Another rod punched through the hull of a nearby Vorthok cruiser, and the massive ship began to spin out of control. Then another, and another. The beautiful, synchronized alien fleet was being torn apart by what amounted to very fast rocks. The Vorthok had made a fatal error in their understanding of physics. Their energy shields were marvels of advanced technology, capable of deflecting laser beams, plasma bolts, and particle weapons. But they had been designed to stop energy, not matter, and the humans were throwing a lot of matter at them. Very, very fast. Hidden behind a large asteroid on the far side of the moon, Captain Yoon Jamin watched the chaos unfold through his ship's sensors. For months, he had been leading a secret fleet of human vessels, keeping them hidden from alien detection. The ships weren't pretty. They were built from mining equipment, cargo haulers, and even old passenger liners. But they all had one thing in common. They were loaded with kinetic weapons. "All ships, this is Captain Yoon," he announced over the secure communications channel. "The aliens are distracted by the orbital bombardment. Time to join the party. Remember, we don't need to be fancy. We just need to hit them hard." The human fleet emerged from behind asteroids, moons, and space stations like wolves coming out of the forest. They weren't sleek like the Vorthok ships, were ugly, practical, and absolutely deadly. Every vessel had been converted into a weapons platform, carrying thousands of tungsten rods, steel balls, and even chunks of asteroid rock. Admiral Song Haijin coordinated the attack from her command ship, hidden deep inside an asteroid mining facility. Her screen showed the battle unfolding in real time. She couldn't help but smile grimly as she watched alien vessels being torn apart by humanity's most primitive weapons. "Ma'am," her weapons officer reported, "we're achieving 90% hit rates. The aliens can't adapt to kinetic bombardment. Their shields are useless against solid projectiles." "Keep firing," Admiral Song ordered. "And, remember, aim for their engines first. A disabled ship is better than a destroyed one. We might need to study their technology later." The Vorthok fleet was learning a painful lesson about human warfare. Humans didn't fight fair. They didn't follow rules of engagement. When faced with superior technology, they didn't try to match it. They found ways around it. The aliens had energy shields, so humans used kinetic weapons. The aliens had plasma cannons, so humans attacked from multiple directions at once. Commander Nexus watched his fleet falling apart around him and realized with growing horror that his species had made a terrible mistake. They had declared war on a species that had spent thousands of years learning how to kill things bigger and stronger than themselves. As tungsten rods continued to tear through Vorthok hulls, Commander Nexus finally realized his fleet was in serious trouble. Half his ships were already disabled or destroyed, and the primitive human weapons showed no signs of stopping. It was time to retreat and regroup. "All ships, begin emergency withdrawal," he commanded through the fleet's communication network. "Fall back to safe distance and prepare for." His order was cut short as his own ship's weapons suddenly swiveled around and fired directly at the vessel next to him. Nexus stared in horror as his plasma cannons, completely beyond his control, blasted a hole through his Ali's hull. "What's happening?" he screamed at his technical crew. "Why are our weapons firing on our own ships?" Deep beneath the mountains of South Korea, Master Sergeant Kim Dong-woo allowed himself a satisfied smile as he watched lines of code scroll across his computer screen. For the past 5 years, ever since humanity's first contact with the Vorthok, he had been leading the most secret cyber warfare operation in human history. "Sir," one of his team members reported, "we've successfully penetrated their command network. The virus is spreading through their entire fleet." Kim Dong-woo had spent 20 years as a computer hacker before joining the military. He had broken into corporate databases, government systems, and even military networks of hostile nations. But this was his masterpiece: a computer. Virus specifically designed to turn advanced alien technology against itself. The Vorthok had made another critical error. Their fleet was completely interconnected, with every ship sharing data through a single network. This made them incredibly efficient in coordinated attacks, but it also made them vulnerable. If someone could hack into that network, they could control the entire fleet. Technical Officer Lee, begin Phase 2. Kim Dong-woo ordered. Technical Officer Lee Yuan-soo had been waiting for this moment. Her specialty was creating feedback loops, computer programs that would trap enemy systems in endless cycles of confusion. She had perfected these techniques against human targets, but alien computers turned out to be even more vulnerable. "Initiating Cascade Failure Protocol," she announced, her fingers dancing across her keyboard. "Let's see how their fancy AI handles a little chaos." The virus spread through the Vorthok network like wildfire. What started as a simple infiltration quickly became a complete takeover. Ship computers began receiving conflicting orders. Navigation systems started sending vessels in circles. Weapons systems couldn't tell friend from foe. Commander watched his fleet tear itself apart as ship after ship fell victim to the human cyber attack. His own vessel's computer was flashing warning messages he couldn't understand. The AI that had once perfectly coordinated his fleet was now trapped in an endless loop, trying to process contradictory commands. "Sir," his communications officer reported in panic, "the network is compromised. Every ship is receiving different orders. The AI thinks we're the enemy. Shut down the network." Nexus ordered. "I can't, sir. The virus has locked us out of our own systems." The humans had done something that no species in the galaxy had ever accomplished. They had turned the Vorthok's greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The interconnected fleet that had conquered dozens of worlds was now destroying itself from within. Kim Dong-woo watched the chaos unfold on his screens and couldn't help but chuckle. The Vorthok had studied human warfare for decades, but they had missed something important. Humans didn't just fight with guns and bombs. They fought with their minds, their creativity, and their absolute refusal to give up. The aliens were learning that when humans couldn't win with superior technology, they simply changed the rules of the game. The space around Earth had become a nightmare of twisted metal and floating debris. What had once been the mighty Vorthok invasion fleet now drifted in pieces. Their beautiful crystalline hulls cracked and broken like shattered glass. Commander Nexus stared through his damaged view screen at the carnage surrounding his command ship, unable to believe what had happened in just 3 hours. "Status report," he demanded, though his voice had lost all its earlier confidence. "Sir," his tactical officer replied with trembling hands, "we've lost 57% of the fleet. Another 20% are severely damaged and unable to fight. The humans are not fighting like any species we've encountered before." Nexus had studied the military doctrines of hundreds of civilizations. Every advanced species followed certain rules of engagement. They protected their valuable ships, They avoided unnecessary casualties. They fought with honor and dignity. But humans seem to have thrown all those concepts out the window. They're using their mining stations as weapons, his officer continued. Every asteroid facility in the system has been converted into a missile platform. They're sacrificing their own infrastructure just to attack us. Director Park Sora watched the battle unfold from her command center on Ceres, the largest asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. For 15 years, she had overseen the mining operations that supplied Earth with rare metals and minerals. Now, she was turning every single mining platform into a weapon of war. Station 7, launch your payload, she ordered into her headset. Station 12, prepare for ramming speed. The mining stations weren't designed for combat, but humans had a talent for making anything into a weapon, or processors became missile launchers. Cargo containers were filled with explosives. Even the massive mining robots were programmed to grab onto alien ships and detonate themselves. Ma'am, her communications officer reported, Station 12. Confirms they're on collision course with the alien cruiser. The mining station would be completely destroyed, along with billions of credits worth of equipment. But it would also take out an alien warship that could have bombarded Earth's cities. The choice was obvious. Captain Jung Minho was coordinating the automated defense systems from his position on Luna Base. His job was perhaps the most brutal of all. He was programming human machines to commit suicide, attacks against the alien fleet. Every cargo hauler, every maintenance robot, every automated system in Earth's orbital network had been turned into a guided missile. System 447 has achieved direct hit on enemy destroyer, he reported calmly. System 448 is moving to intercept the damaged cruiser. The aliens couldn't understand this human tactic. In Vorthok culture, every ship was precious, every life valuable. They would never willingly sacrifice their own vessels in kamikaze attacks. But humans were different. They understood that sometimes you had to lose the battle to win the war. Sir Jung Minho's aide reported, the aliens are trying to retreat. But our automated systems are following them. We've programmed every unmanned vessel to pursue and destroy. Commander Nexus realized with growing horror that his species had made a fundamental error. They had expected humans to fight like civilized beings following rules and maintaining honor. Instead, they had encountered a species that fought like cornered animals, with absolute ruthlessness and complete disregard for their own losses. The space around Earth had become a graveyard, and the Vorthok Empire was learning why humans had survived every extinction event their planet had ever thrown at them. The quantum communication burst reached every corner of human space in seconds. From the mining colonies at the edge of the galaxy to the research stations hidden in remote star systems, the message was simple and terrifying. Earth was under attack. The Vorthok Empire had declared war on humanity. On the mining world of Kepler 4-4b, Commander Lim Wusong received the emergency transmission while inspecting the titanium extraction facilities. The grizzled veteran had spent 15 years building this colony from nothing, turning a barren rock into humanity's most productive mining operation. Now, as he watched Vorthok ships approaching his system, he knew it was time to reveal the colony's true purpose. All workers report to emergency stations, he announced over the colony's communication system. We are implementing Defense Protocol Alpha. This is not a drill. The massive industrial platforms that had been extracting precious metals from the planet's core suddenly began a dramatic transformation. Hidden compartments opened, revealing weapon systems that had been disguised as mining equipment. The ore processors that had been refining titanium for spacecraft construction were quickly retooled to manufacture ammunition. Within hours, the peaceful mining operation had become a weapons factory. Sir, his operations manager reported, all platforms are operational. We're producing kinetic rounds at maximum capacity. The railgun launchers are coming online now. The Musone smiled grimly. The Vorthok intelligence had identified his world as a simple mining colony. But they had missed the obvious truth. Any facility that could extract metals from a planet's core could also launch those same metals at enemy ships with devastating force. Meanwhile, on the agricultural world of New Jeju, Supervisor Kim Na-young was activating systems that had been hidden beneath fields of genetically modified crops. The planet had been feeding human colonies for decades, but it had also been serving as a secret military installation. "Orbital defense platforms are coming online," she reported to Earth Command. "The Vorthok ships entering our system have no idea what they're flying into." The aliens saw vast fields of grain and vegetables, massive atmospheric processors that kept the planet's air breathable, and what appeared to be simple farming equipment. They didn't realize that the weather control satellites were actually weapons platforms, or that the irrigation systems were launch tubes for Surface-2 space missiles. "Ma'am," her tactical officer announced, "enemy vessels are within range. They're not even attempting evasive maneuvers. They think we're defenseless." Kim Na-young had spent her entire career growing food to keep humanity alive. Now she was about to show these aliens what happened when you threatened the people she fed, thousands of light years away. On a research station orbiting a dying star, Director Choi Jun-ho was making his own preparations. His facility was officially studying stellar collapse, but the massive particle accelerators and gravitational wave detectors had a secondary purpose that few people knew about. Began charging the gravitational pulse generator, he ordered his team. "See how well Vorthok shields handle a concentrated gravity wave. The research station's equipment, designed to study the most violent forces in the universe. It's about to become a weapon that could tear apart starships at the molecular level." All across human space, the pattern was the same. Every colony, every outpost, every research station was revealing hidden defenses. The Vorthok had expected to find scattered, helpless settlements. Instead, they discovered that humanity had turned every single installation into a potential fortress: the aliens. "We're learning that when humans built something in space, they built it to fight." Commander Nexus floated in the wreckage of his command bridge, emergency lighting casting eerie shadows across his alien features. Half his crew was dead, his ship's hull was breached in 17 places, and his mighty invasion fleet had been reduced to floating scrap metal. But the proud Vorthok commander had one last card to play. "If we cannot conquer them," he snarled through his damaged communication system, "then we will destroy them completely, target their cities, kill every human on that cursed planet." Weapons officer, bleeding from multiple wounds, looked up from his shattered console. "Sir, we only have 3 ships left with operational weapons. But if we concentrate all our firepower on their population centers, ... Do it," Nexus commanded. "Show them what happens when they resist the Vorthok Empire." The 3 remaining alien ships, their hulls scarred and smoking, began their final descent toward Earth. Their plasma cannons, designed to crack open mountains and boil oceans, charged for one last devastating attack. If the Vorthok couldn't have Earth, then nobody would. But as the alien ships entered Earth's atmosphere, something unexpected happened. The sky around them suddenly lit up with thousands of bright flashes, like the world's most spectacular fireworks display. Every plasma bolt, every energy beam, every weapon the aliens fired was being intercepted by streams of light that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Defense. Coordinator Lee Taemin watched the alien attack from his command center deep beneath Seoul, his screens showing the incredible light show taking place above the planet. For decades, Earth had been installing point defense systems to protect against space debris, the millions of pieces of junk that orbited the planet and occasionally fell toward populated areas. "Sir," his tactical officer reported with amazement, "the debris defense network is performing perfectly. Every alien weapon is being intercepted before it can reach the surface." Lee Taemin allowed himself a small smile. The Vorthok had studied human military technology, but they had completely ignored the civilian systems that protected Earth's cities from falling satellites and meteor strikes. Those same systems that could vaporize a chunk of space rock moving at 20,000 miles per hour had no trouble stopping alien plasma beams. "Increase power to all sectors," he ordered. "Let's make sure not a single shot gets through." The point defense network consisted of thousands of laser installations, particle beam generators, and kinetic interceptors spread across the planet's surface. They had been designed to work together, creating an invisible shield that could stop anything falling from space. Now they were proving that civilian technology could be just as deadly as military weapons, Commander. Nexus watched in disbelief as his final attack was completely neutralized. Every shot his ships fired was met by defensive fire from the planet. Below, his weapons couldn't even reach their targets, let alone destroy them. Impossible, he whispered. How can they stop everything? Our weapons are the most advanced in the galaxy. But as his ship's systems finally failed completely, as his last remaining vessels fell dark and began their final plunge toward Earth's surface, Nexus finally understood his species' greatest mistake. The Vorthok had studied human warfare, but they had failed to understand human nature. Humans didn't just build weapons to fight wars. They built everything to protect themselves. Their debris defense systems, their mining equipment, their research stations, even their farming tools. Everything could become a weapon when humanity's survival was at stake. The mighty Vorthok Empire had just learned why humans had survived. Every disaster their planet had ever thrown at them. The silence that followed the battle was almost deafening. 6 hours ago, the most powerful fleet in the galaxy had arrived at Earth, demanding humanity's surrender. Now, pieces of Vorthok ships drifted through space like broken toys, their hulls twisted and shattered beyond recognition. Force that had conquered dozens of worlds had been completely destroyed by a species they had dismissed as primitive barbarians. In the debris field that had once been a proud alien armada, small escape pods began transmitting desperate messages. On all frequencies, the survivors who had spent decades studying human warfare were now begging for mercy from the very species they had come to destroy. "Please," came one transmission from a damaged pod. "We surrender. We yield completely. Do not fire upon us. We acknowledge human superiority." President Han Ju-woo sat in the emergency command center, listening to the alien surrender requests, with a mixture of relief and sadness. The elderly leader had spent his entire political career working for peace. But when faced with extinction, he had authorized the most devastating military response in human history. "Open a channel to all surviving Vorthok vessels," he ordered. "This is President Han Ju-woo of Earth. We accept your surrender. Prepare to be recovered by our rescue ships." The president's words were broadcast not just to the alien survivors, but to every corner of the galaxy through quantum communication networks. Within hours, every spacefaring civilization would know what had happened to the Vorthok Empire. However, President Han continued, his voice carrying a steel edge that hadn't been there before. "Let me make something perfectly clear to every species listening to this transmission. Humanity did not start this war. We did not seek this conflict. Every action we took was purely defensive. But if any other species believes they can threaten our families, our children, our very existence, they will face the same fate." Fleet Admiral Park Hyunjin stood beside the president, her uniform still bearing the scorch marks from the battle. She had coordinated humanity's response from the very beginning, and now she had a message for the galaxy. To every military commander listening to this broadcast, she announced, "Study what happened here today." The Vorthok Empire believed they understood human warfare. They analyzed our weapons, our ships, our tactics. But they failed to understand the most important thing about humanity. We adapt. We survive. We turn everything around us into a weapon. When necessary, the Admiral gestured toward the tactical displays showing the debris field. Every piece of civilian infrastructure in our space became a military asset. Every mining platform, every research station, every weather satellite was converted into a weapon. This is not because we are warlike. This is because we refuse to be destroyed. Across the galaxy, alien military leaders watched the recordings of the battle with growing unease. The Vorthok had possessed the most advanced technology in known space, yet they had been defeated by metal rods and computer viruses. Their energy shields had been useless against simple kinetic weapons. Their interconnected fleet had been turned against self by human hackers. But perhaps most disturbing of all was the realization that humanity had been preparing for this moment without even knowing it would come. Every human installation in space had been built with the capability to become a weapon. Every system had been designed to fight. The galaxy was learning a new truth. Humans didn't just build things to work, they built things to survive. And when survival was threatened, there was no limit to human ingenuity and determination. The Vorthok Empire had come to conquer what they saw as a primitive species. Instead, they had awakened something that the galaxy had never seen before. A civilization that could turn anything into a weapon and refused to surrender under any circumstances.